Welcome to the Power Exit Podcast. This show is dedicated to business owners who want to scale up, plan smarter, and prepare for the ultimate exit. We'll talk with M&A experts and owners who've been through the process to provide actionable advice so that you can sell your business on your terms and without regret. I'm John Marsh. Join me as we prepare to take control of your exit. Andrew Neitlich, thank you for joining the Power Exit Podcast today. I'm thrilled to have you, a former client, and now become a friend, which is not always the case, but I'm glad it has. So I'm thrilled to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time to join the podcast today. Really, I just want to talk to you about your story. I want to hear a little bit about the Center for Executive Coaching, what you saw when you founded the business, how you grew it, and kind of what led you to, hiring Marsh Creek to help you take control of the process of selling. So if you would, for the listener out there, would you tell them a little bit about, who you are, what the Center for Executive Coaching does, and kind of what you built there? So would love to start with just some background and an intro, Andrew.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me on as well. So I was a management consultant for a long time, like up until about 2000, and got really tired of the lifestyle of flying. I think I'd be taking like 5 a.m., getting up, going to the airport, coming back late Thursday night, if the flight was even on time. And I met the woman I was going to marry, and so this is not sustainable. And at the same time, clients knew the answers, right? I think, we would do all these analyses we were proud of, and they knew the answer. So they really, what I was gleaning at the time was they were valuing time just to talk to someone who was safe to talk to, a sounding board, all of that. So I said, why don't I just do that and skip the consulting stuff and sort of extract the most powerful conversations? So around 2000, I became a coach, and a little bit later started training other people to become coaches. I was really enjoying it. I noticed that the training programs that were out there, they were just sort of weird. They were fluffy. They were sort of almost a religion. There wasn't a lot that was practical, market focused on executive and leadership coaching. So I started a company to train and certify other coaches. Initially, it was nothing more than a weekly teleclass, literally on a cell phone, where you dialed into you remember those numbers before any Zoom or Citrix or, WebEx or anything, and a binder. I would just mail them a binder with a, sort of some papers, and we talk about coaching. And, over time, I just listened to what was possible. And I wrote a book about coaching. I teamed up with the guerrilla marketing guru, J. Conrad Levinson. We wrote a book about marketing for coaches, and it just kept growing and growing from there, created a member area, very much just an organic growth story. I mean, I think Tony Robbins says, what does he say? He says, we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade. And so I just keep looking for new opportunities. Got accredited with the International Coaching Federation. I can't remember the exact year, but let's call it 2012. That helped growth a lot. And it just kept going from there. So, it's a good 2-decade story of working from home and growing a business while still doing executive coaching.
No, and it's fascinating. One of the things that I was surprised to see from you when we first met is that you built this pretty successful business. You had, I forget the number of coaches who were in your program. Do you remember exactly how many, or a round number, how many were in your program when you sold?
I don't know. At the time, we considered a member to be a member. So since 2006, when we incorporated, probably 3,500 people got certified with us.
Yeah. But where I was going with this is you've built this business that had rapid growth, but you were the only W-2 employee.
Yeah.
And you seem to have a good work-life balance, right? You were always involved with taking your children to do their activities. You played tennis, and you never seemed like you were working for the business. It was working for you. So how did that happen, right? Because when we took your business to market, you weren't doing a robust marketing effort. You have a presence on LinkedIn. Obviously, referrals are a great piece for your business, but from a marketing growth standpoint, what were your goals? Was it to, hey, one day sell the business, or was it just to create a lifestyle business? Kind of when you started it in the mid 2000s, where did you want to be in that Tony Robbins example in 10 years?
Yeah. I wish I was as intentional as your question
Yeah.
indicates what I know is number one, I'm a terrible employee, like really, really bad. I just really didn't enjoy working for companies. I'm not good with authority. I'm not, if you look at my, the assessment profiles that executive coaches do, I'm low on accommodating, very high on independence. Working from a
Mm,
home office is perfect for me. I love freedom, flexibility, and I love creating. I love writing and things like that. So really, it was, I suppose, a lifestyle business. It's interesting you mentioned leverage in the sense that I guess there was leverage. The internet gave me a lot of leverage. I hired other faculty. The first thing I outsourced was accounting, and then found IT experts, marketing experts. So a lot of contractors helped do that. But it was still my name on the door, and so in that sense,
yeah.
it was still in the business in
Yeah.
a way.
Well, for again, for the listener, the goal of this podcast is to provide value to those who are looking to exit. And one of the things you said there that I loved was you outsourced accounting, right? A lot of folks just think they want to bring it in and keep it close, and I don't need other people. I'm afraid to spend the money. So kudos to you for that. Um, so why hire Marsh Creek? Obviously you had this business that was throwing off some great cash. It seemed like your lifestyle was great. You're still a youngish man. I can say ish at the end of that if that's okay. But you're still a young man. So what was why was it that you thought, hey, I'm going to take this call from John and consider the
Right.
opportunity to sell my business?
So, first of all, the listeners have an advantage that I don't, right? I was getting unsolicited emails. You want to sell, and some came from individuals wanting to buy a business, but I'd say
Yep.
every week I was getting 5 of the same thing you sent me. Yours came across as more professional. The reason I responded at that time was somewhere around there. The business was reaching a point where I knew it was growing and getting bigger than my capabilities to run it. So, and it was frustrating. Like, I'm not good and don't enjoy administrative and financial things. So let's
Mhm.
say 1% of customers take a lot of time. When the business was small, that was no problem. But as it grew, nothing changed. Same 1%, but
Yeah.
it's a much bigger number. So it was that. I had an IT team, very small. Every time something went wrong with IT, the guy was hiking without internet connection and said, I'll have to get back to you on Monday. And so IT always goes out on Friday night. So he's hiking and I have to wait, 2 days. I'm responding to emails from people who can't get into the member area. It was stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was number one. Number two, and this is my own personal assessment, there's a lot of systemic risk out there, right? I think it's even worse now than it was, 2 years ago. Geopolitical risk, country financial risk, and on and on. And so there was that. Now, again, that's my own assessment. I
Sure.
thought, not a bad time. At first, you eventually did a valuation that showed me, there's a lot of wealth locked up in this company
Yeah.
potentially. So why wouldn't I take that kind of risk off the table, given what I perceive to be uncertainty today? So I think it was really 2 buckets. One, this administrative burden was growing larger than I could handle it. Same thing, there were a lot of opportunities that I saw, but I just one person. I needed a team that I wasn't capable of putting in place. So there was that,
Yeah.
and then the systemic risk. Those 2 things.
So no, and that's helpful. I've jumped ahead a little bit. I want to go back to kind of the infrastructure of your team and the delivery model, right? So in 2000, it was different, right? You mentioned there was no Zoom, no WebEx, no Teams, none of that stuff. So you were delivering this content, but you also did in-person seminars, right? And you had independent contractors around the country who were delivering in-person workshops. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Well, I would do here in Sarasota, Florida, in person workshops. And one faculty member would do some on the West Coast. Largely, the faculty would do what became, Zoom classes. So they picked up there.
Gotcha.
People would come to me. That all, of course, stopped during COVID, and I think COVID gave us a big push towards growth because I
Yeah.
was miscalculating. Everyone was so happy to come to in-person seminars. I thought that was the market. When COVID
Right.
hit, what we learned was a lot of people don't want to fly or deal with any of that. And so that, they much prefer, a 1 hour Zoom class. A couple of those a week are fine. So that was a really interesting insight that came.
And were you set up to make that pivot? And so in March of 2020, obviously March, we were all trying to figure out what the heck was going on.
Right.
But, April, May, June, as things kind of, I don't want to say settled down, but as we started to adjust to the new normal, was the Center for Executive Coaching ready to pounce on that? Or did you have to scramble to say, hey, let's get the infrastructure set up to start delivering over Zoom? It sounds like no, you already had that capability. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's easy. Zoom's so easy.
Yeah.
The trigger point for me was we had a scheduled in-person seminar, and someone from Boston called and said, are you seeing this thing coming? I'm not comfortable coming, and so I don't know what to do. But she was one of those evangelists saying, but I can't do it online. I just can't. But I said, all right, I'm going to do it online and see. And we got a great response. So again, it's all organic. What's great about the kind of business I have is I can very quickly test an idea and it works or didn't. And in this case, we just said, let's go for it. Let's do a Zoom seminar. And that worked perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things I admire about you throughout this process. It's an emotional process, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you were quick to number one, respond, right? When I needed something or the buyer needed something, you were on it. And, we say time kills deals, but I think that translated back to your business and how you were able to capitalize on what happened in COVID and not really take a step back, right? But, ride that momentum. Unfortunately, a lot of folks, depending on their business, weren't able to
Right.
capitalize on that experience or that event, if you will. So you've been getting these emails, right? You were getting unsolicited offers, which is something that is extremely common. It's super noisy out there from folks like me, from buyers. So why not do a deal on your own? Why not say, hey, I have people approaching me. Why not just say, hey, I'm going to take one of these offers? What led you to say, hey, I need representation. I think it's important that I, hire someone to manage this process.
Well, I think when an individual comes and says, I want to buy your company, there's no way to get an objective gauge of what they're saying. I mean, some of those folks are very slick, very, they're good at the game. I mean, I think of the Wolf of Wall Street kind of character, and I could see them hammering me down to something very, just unattractive that I would still think, well, this is the only thing I have. So, I mean, what you were able to do and did do very well was cast a wide net, get a lot of interest. I mean, I really feel like it was like a tooth cleaning. I mean, if there was a potential buyer, you found them and they had the opportunity to look at the business properly, take a good assessment of it and decide if they wanted to have a conversation. So that was a no-brainer. The real trick was who I pick that is in your field. And you came across much more professionally than the others. And again, this is where I now know something that your listeners can know that I didn't know then, which is that you're the real deal. You turned out to be perfect. I have colleagues that are in businesses like this and we talk and it's, their business model is totally different. I would say it lacks integrity. They'll take anybody, even if they're not ready to sell or qualified, they'll take money from them, a lot of money, and they're not set up on the back end to actually find prospective buyers and things like that. Now, I knew none of this. I got lucky, quite honestly, that yours was the email, but there was something in your email that I got the sense of quality. And then when you did the assessment, it was a good assessment and valuation. My son, as you know, is in finance. He did a spreadsheet and a discounted cash flow. I know enough to kind of come up with what I think it was worth. And, you provided a comprehensive view of the business that goes beyond the spreadsheet and says, here's the pros, here's the cons, here's how we arrived at the valuation. And I thought it was definitely in range and reasonable.
Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of good firms out there who do what I do, right? I'm obviously not the only one. But what you said there is important for anybody who's considering hiring an advisor of any kind. At a certain size, you don't need to be paying large retainers. There are firms out there who will charge a $35,000, $50,000 upfront fee to give you that valuation and to develop the marketing materials, or what's called the confidential information memorandum. So it's important that someone hires a firm that works on a success fee, right? We don't take large retainers. A lot of firms out there are great at marketing to business owners and get them to pay a large retainer upfront. our model and others is success fee based, where we charge a very small or nominal development fee, candidly, because cash equals commitment and it costs us money to get a business out to market. So we want some level of buy-in from our clients. But let's transition into the process, right? You had gotten these unsolicited offers. A lot of folks think, hey, I'm going to take one of these unsolicited offers and I don't need representation to help get this done, right? So beyond building the market, casting the wide net, tell us about the process of selling, the level of diligence, not only starting from beginning with developing comprehensive and quality marketing materials to then when a buyer is engaged and what that looks like. I mentioned earlier that you managed that process quickly, or you were quick to respond. And even if the answer was, hey, I don't know, right? We were able to figure out a way to get the buyer some level of data. But just talk to the audience about what that process is and how intense it can be to get a good deal done.
Right. Well, I think actually the easy part was getting to an offer. I know that, offers, I was fortunate to get not just one, but I think we got 6. You call them letters of intent to potentially move forward. That, quite frankly, was the easy part. I simply responded to questions you asked, things about financials, marketing. You put everything together, and you had the network and the resources to cast that wide net to get people who are interested the opportunity to take a look at the business, sign the NDA, and do all of that. That to me was when I was still in wait and see mode. Let's see if this guy can deliver. Valuation was good, and you delivered. The hard part, the emotionally taxing part, the part that was the longest part and very challenging, was what happened after we accepted an offer. And going through the psychology of that. That's where there were things I had no idea about, didn't understand. You helped me, as did the attorney, helped me. And that sort of thing. So I divided into 3 parts, right? From the let's work together, let's see what you can do. Then from the accepting an offer to the due diligence stuff. And then okay, now we've closed the deal still keeps going, right? Because of the terms of most of these deals. So those are the 3 phases. It's that middle phase that for me was super stressful.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that, because it is stressful. I don't think it was more stressful for you than anyone else. That's extremely common. And candidly, there's a lot of stuff that comes up that you're not, a business owner's not familiar with,
That's
right?
exactly
They've never done it. And it does take a team. It's not just the M&A advisor or Marsh Creek. It's also the attorney. It's also your internal stakeholders, like your CPA, who's responsible for helping us getting information. We pride ourselves, and I'm teeing you up here for this, right? We pride ourselves on being there throughout the process, right? So not only getting you offers, a lot of advisors go away and say, okay, you've got the offer, you and your attorney handle it. Right. But how, and again, I'm trying to, because I don't want this to be a Marsh Creek thing. I want it to be about how we handle that. I think we handled it smoothly.
No, the deal would not have closed if you had walked away, because let me look at, we should talk about like 3 areas, right? One is the terms of the deal, the big terms, right? And understanding those. I have a Harvard MBA. I couldn't do the math on, I think you call it a waterfall, like how the deal flows, who gets what, right, when. I didn't understand it. I needed you to talk me through that. That's number 1. Number 2, attorneys, the legal documents, like there's words that to me mean something, but to an attorney team means something totally different. And they're traps. Like if a layman goes in and says, oh, this looks reasonable, for instance, damages, right? Every contract's going to have indemnification. I could take a week-long legal course just on when do you calculate damages? Is it if there are real damages that they actually have? How do you make a claim? What's material? Where does it come from? Like stuff like that. When I read the contract, like, oh, this looks okay. And the lawyer says, no, be very, very careful here. There's some. So that's one. And then the other thing is this quality of earnings stuff. I was a cash-based business on accounting. I assume a lot of small businesses are.
Yes.
Any kind of, I think, sophisticated buyer needs to convert that, as I understand it, to the GAAP accounting. And that can lead to a lot of questions and concerns. In my case, it all worked out okay after the fact,
Yeah.
but I went through a lot of mental agita trying to understand that, if you recall. So, but
Yeah.
you were there, and I think the biggest place where you made the difference, and I was talking to others who were going through this process. They said the one thing you're going to have to do at a certain point is call off the lawyers and just decide whether we go forward or not. I was spending a fortune on attorney fees. I respect my lawyer. Good job. But at a certain time, we had to say, all right, this is enough. We're either moving forward or we're not. As you say, time kills deals. But anyway, you were there. There were phases that I don't even quite comprehend, but you knew when to say, are we okay moving forward with this? Are we not? Here's what you need to know. You have to make a business decision versus a legal decision. All of that. If you weren't there, I would have run from this deal, because it got scary.
Yeah.
And you could translate between the lawyers, the accountants, and somebody like me. I've taken 2 accounting courses. So Accounting 101, I took 1 law class, and it was business law, and it was my worst grade in business school. I mean, I just don't have a mind for that. So again, this is where, you definitely proved your value.
Yeah. Well, and it's not about me or Marsh Creek. It's more about the business that you built and the buyer that we were able to select. Now,
Right.
we selected that buyer because of the business that you built. Any advisor is not going to get some buyer to buy your business just because we want them to, right? It's about the business. I say to my clients, and it's true, it's a little tongue in cheek, but I'm not going to sell your business. I'm going to create the market, but no sophisticated buyer is going to buy a business without talking to the owner. And getting an understanding and a direct line of communication with the owner. So, kudos to you for building a business that allowed me to create that market and brought really many buyers, but the ultimate buyer was a been there, done that private equity firm who handles things the right way, and they do deals the right way. Yes, it's going to be a negotiation to get a legal document done, a negotiation to get the LOI done. But these buyers were serious about buying your business, right?
Yeah.
So, and they acted in good faith. But tell us a little bit about what life was like after for you, right? So you've said here in this podcast that you're not, you're an independent guy. You're not a great employee. So, but before you answer that, let's back up and say, what were you looking for post-closing? What was your involvement? Again, youngish guy, not ready to hang it up. You don't want to play tennis 10 hours a day or go walk on the beach and have nothing to do. What were you looking for that post-transaction role for you? Because you're still there with the Center for Executive Coaching.
Correct.
Talk to us a little bit about how that transition has been for you, what your role has been, and how you've been able to kind of put that desire for independence away or manage that with a large private equity firm.
Right. Well, so the private equity firm had a platform, right, of some leadership development firms, of which we are one as part of that. So, when I talked to some other people who had been through this process, often it was just them, like buying, a cloud computing company or something like that, where you would still have the CEO be there. In this case, I think they did they knew me. They really did a very good job of saying, you're going to do what you like to do, which in my case is creating and delivering content and education. They know I didn't like the financial administrative stuff. Well, that's what they had a team to do.
Yeah.
And they put in somebody that is on the executive team that works through me. So I remain independent. I do what I do well, and they do the stuff, that they're designed to do, right? Growth, new IT infrastructure, new marketing infrastructure, all the stuff that earlier on I was telling you, I had reached my capacity as a leader and a manager to do. So it's been, I think, very nice. I mean, I continue to teach. I'm doing a very nice in-person seminar coming up with a prestigious university, and we achieved that together. I think after the sale, I still like talking to our members when they need support about building an executive coaching practice. So I'm doing the stuff I love and not doing the stuff I don't love. And as an independent person, they said this, we know his personality. That's what their job is. So let's structure his work so that he doesn't get frustrated and we don't get frustrated with him. And I think they've done
Yeah.
a really good job, and they've been honorable. And that's one of the reasons I think I picked them is I
Yeah.
like the platform they had. I like their values. And they've, I did some due diligence on how are other people in deals responding, what was their experience. And, so I got very fortunate with a very professional buyer that, is honoring the contract. And in fact, sometimes they've done more than the contract said, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thrilled. It's not always that way. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled for you. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the LOI process, right? So you mentioned something about, it wasn't a huge lift for you in that phase prior to LOIs. And that's where we're behind the scenes doing a lot of work, right? We're having calls with buyers. You and I had a management meeting and went down the road. We had an LOI from another buyer. We were negotiating an LOI through this process. And ultimately that buyer wasn't able to come up with the funds. Now, we didn't sign the LOI, right? And that's a big risk. 50% of deals don't close post LOI, and the variety of factors. Like you said, some of these buyers are very professional and slick. I'm not going to say they're all, they all don't have bad intentions. Some of them have very good intentions, but oftentimes they don't have the money. They're relying on someone else. So we were lucky enough to find a private equity firm with committed capital who was able to complete the transaction. So I guess I'm not looking for a response from you, but that offer from that buyer who couldn't come up with the money was a very attractive offer. It was a very attractive offer. And we liked what they had to say, but ultimately it wasn't a good fit for us because they couldn't close the deal.
So I'm glad you brought that up because, part of this is giving advice to people thinking about the process, right? And again, as I said, I have colleagues who do similar work to you. And one of their biggest frustrations is a lot of potential sellers have unrealistic expectations about what their business is worth, number one. And number two, like I saw a trap in that offer, right? Which is, they could have offered billions of dollars, but if they can't fund it, it's still $0. So sometimes the best offer is not the best offer from just a single metric, right? It was I'm not very risk averse, right? You saw, I don't like a lot of stress, and I could tell those offers that weren't funded, I knew what would happen, and I knew it was going to be an uncomfortable process for me. It wasn't right for me in that sense. I would rather what do they say? Take a fast nickel instead of a slower, non-existent dime. And I'd much rather do that. And, as long as the nickel is in range, right? I'm also not a doormat, but I think buyers I talk to who run businesses, I think a lot of them really think their business is worth 3-4 times more than it is. And I think one of the advantages that made this work for me that I brought to the table was I'm willing to be realistic. I understand that this is a good business. I love what you used to say, there's no perfect business. Every business has strengths and weaknesses. And so for me, it was, I'm comfortable with the concept of enough. What is a fair enough kind of price? And so that was a big factor, I think, in evaluating our options.
Yeah. And that's an important note that I want to chat briefly about. We do this opinion of value for folks who are ideal prospects for us, and we do it free of charge. We're proud of that because, and I forget we won't talk about numbers, but we'll talk about the range here. I think we were really close from my initial valuation to what we were able to command from the market. But no one's going to pay you, $100 million for your business in cash at closing. There is some level of contingency oftentimes. There's also holdbacks, indemnification holdbacks, escrows, things like that. Your deal was a great deal because a lot of that was very reasonable. The targets we had to hit, you had to hit. I was gone at that point, just sending you text messages saying, I hope it's going well and let's grab dinner. But talk to me a little bit about, this offer and why it was reasonable. I think, knock on wood here, I think you're past all those hurdles and there was no holdback for you. You got everything they said that you were going to get in the offer. Is that the case?
Yeah. What I would say, in giving advice to people, like here's what was going through my head and still is in my case anyway, right? I'm selling a business, and I guess there's a difference between an earnout and a holdback, right? But to me, an earnout,
There
I think,
is.
is where you have to grow the business a certain level. A holdback might be here's a level, just to make sure that things are legit and there's momentum and things like that. But
Yeah.
when at least my experience of selling is I'm giving up full autonomy and authority, but I have responsibility for a number. And that's a really uncomfortable place to be. I mean, they say never take a job where you have responsibility but not authority, right? So what if the
Mm,
company decides, hey, let's just cut all the good staff. We'll just arbitrarily cut all your good people.
right.
That didn't happen here, but I'm just saying hypothetical. Let's say they say, you know what? Let's change our marketing budget from this to a Super Bowl ad and hope the Super Bowl ad works and it flops.
Right.
You don't have a say over that. And so I think it's really was really a troubling issue for me. But we arrived, I think, at a number that I said, you know what, I think this is something that's fair for everybody, and that's the
Yeah.
key.
Well, and we talk about being comfortable with the cash that you're going to get at closing. Obviously, we're going to
Yes.
negotiate the holdbacks and any contingencies on what we feel are fair targets. Like, we don't want someone to say, hey, you've been doing 5 million of revenue, to get this earnout you need to get to 10, right? That's not reasonable and fair. So that's one thing that we were able to negotiate, something that was, protected the buyer in case the business fell off a cliff, but also rewarded you if the business stayed where it was, or where we thought it was going to be, within reason. So that was a big win, I think, in this transaction for you. I do want to touch a little bit on holdbacks and contingencies, since we brought it up. So the holdback is, let's use the example of an indemnification holdback. Generally, for the sake of this conversation, it's between 5 and 10% on transactions of your size. It's larger for smaller transaction, but that indemnity holdback is held by a third party to satisfy claims that come up post-closing that related to your ownership. So let's say the IRS comes after you and says, hey, you didn't pay your 2016 taxes. That's on you. And that would come out of the holdback that is held by a third party for a period of 12 to 24 months generally. So that should be your money unless something unforeseen happens. An earnout is a contingency, right? It's something where, hey, the business needs to keep performing for you to earn this additional compensation. So just for the listeners out there, there is a big difference between indemnification, or holdbacks, and earnouts or contingencies. And that's one of the things that we like to do, and I think we did it for you, is showing, hey, what's the funds flow look like? What are you going to get at closing? And then what's going to come to you later if you hit these different targets? Anything to add there, or anything that I may have missed when I'm covering that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, the biggest thing is whatever you just said. The first time you said it, I didn't know what it meant. So, another value that you bring is you can repeat things different ways to make
Yeah.
it clear to people. Because that was hard for me to get my head around. I mean, as a seller, I just want all cash up front right now, no indemnification. Do your due diligence,
Yeah.
like buying a house, and I want you to sign something that says you've done your work as is. Thanks very much. I'll come here because in good faith, I'll help transition. And that's about it. But obviously, no buyer in their right mind for something like a business that's not a house that you can inspect clearly
Yeah.
is going to accept that. And so I had to wrap my head around that and get comfortable with it. And you were very helpful in showing me data about what's out there, how deals are. And, essentially, again, it's about getting realistic, not just on the price, but on the terms. And so you were very helpful throughout. And then, when the contract comes, we really had to make sure we understood the language and what they were saying. We had asked, not just the lawyers, but, the actual buyers. I mean, it takes some time. It's complicated stuff. And so you need that.
Yeah.
If you just have a lawyer, at least in my case, I know if I only had a lawyer, I'd freak out. I wouldn't understand what they were saying. I need you. You're the translator, number one, and you're the buffer, so that if my emotions are running high, I don't take that out on the other party. If their emotions are running high,
Yeah.
you have to absorb all of that. And then that's what makes a deal happen. I think that's an enormously valuable role.
Yeah, and I also want to add that you were, and I think you already said it, you were well represented. We had a great attorney on our side.
Right.
and he did a great job. And it takes a team. We spent hours and hours and hours on phone calls going through what it means, what the reps and warranties in the purchase agreement mean, where this thing where your risk is. And I was on all of those calls, sometimes a very silent participant, but we could translate that after the fact if we needed, and additionally hop on another phone call with the attorney who was happy to do it. Obviously they bill by the hour, so of course they're happy to do it.
And then I think someone needs to know, that was the most expensive. That's an expensive part of the process. You're going to have to hire an attorney. And you want a good one. You do not. This is not a place. I have scrimped on attorneys on other things and not gotten results. You want an attorney who knows this stuff, lives it, and will fight for you. And it in the end, it's worth the money.
100%. And it's an attorney who will fight for you, who will represent you, but also knows how to close deals.
Yeah, got to move.
There are some attorneys who, and I don't want to say they're doing it wrong, but they may be incentivized to continue to drag this out and bill you time. And that's where we step in. We didn't have to do it on this deal, at least in a forceful way. It was very amicable. We worked as a team. But yes, you've got to be careful to keep everyone honest. So I'm still intrigued by you sitting here in the same spot you were sitting when we did this process. So let's talk before we go there. Let's talk a little bit about the time, right? It does take a lot of time to sell a business. We say on average 9 to 12 months. I think yours was on the shorter end of that. And I don't know the exact dates, but you sold your business in 2023. How long did it take you from the time you hired Marsh Creek to the time you closed? Do you know that?
I think it was 11 months. I think I would, right. I'm not sure, but I would suspect that compared to others, we were faster to the LOI phase. And I feel like the negotiations maybe took a little bit longer than we thought they would.
Yeah. And that's fair because, the buyer was a sophisticated buyer.
Yeah.
They have very good, very qualified attorneys. And just on their side as well, they're trying to get their client protected and making sure that it's a fair deal for their client. That drives the price up. And your deal was of a size where we were expecting to spend significant legal dollars because the buyer was going to be sophisticated, right? They don't make bad investments. They have a track record of returning money to their partners. So, just to add that there, tell me a little bit about what's next for you, right? You're still sitting in the chair. You're still doing what you love, right? I follow you on LinkedIn and your posts you're still posting about executive coaching and what you do. What's next when this is over for you? What's life 2.0 look like for Andrew?
It's a good question. Well, first of all, I want to go back just to when the deal closed, the first class I led after the deal closed. I cannot tell you what I was such a weight off my shoulders. Like I knew it was the right decision. So 2.0 started there. I was like, hey, I'm just leading this class and it's not my company anymore. This is absolutely awesome. So I knew it was the right thing despite the psychological stuff I was going through during the negotiations. But so what I've concluded is a lot about what I don't want to do. I don't want to start another business. In fact, I just saw a book review in the Wall Street Journal, a quick summary about a guy. He just kept repeating, build a business, and he was miserable. He realized, I don't want to robotically do that. I did that. Financially, I feel like we're okay. So, it's just I got a teenage daughter. I got to take care of her. She seems to be a lot of work in terms of tutoring, basketball, music. And great kid. But and I guess what I'm saying is that it's just simple. I don't need to fly. I don't need to do anything differently. We booked a couple of vacations that we probably won, and instead of going to one Miami Heat game, I'm going to go to two. Instead of one Buccaneers game, I'm going to go to two. We'll get better seats, that kind of thing. But I think I'm in. I'm learning a language. I'm doing something like that I've always wanted to do. I can't do guitar again. I've done that 3 times. My wife won't let me try again. I'm terrible at it. So, but it's stuff like that. It's just a really simple life, want to make sure, we're okay, my wife and I, as we get older and no one has to take care of us. And, we'll probably have some, I don't know,
Yeah.
we're in good shape. So
Yeah.
I think that's it. And I think that's part of the whole thing is this attitude of knowing what is enough. Bill Gates would famously yell at employees who didn't have infinite greed. And I just feel like our life was good before. We had plenty of money. Our life is
Yeah.
great now. And I just, it's just simple. My wife and I, she still buys stuff from Target, and we it's the kids. I think the kids are the big drains and time and stuff like that, and that's fine. So I don't have some amazing vision like let's start another one, or let me have 5 houses here or there and let's fly private. I don't let's start a charitable foundation. I mean, we give locally to things.
Sure.
So it's not a very interesting story. I'm sorry to say, it's sort of status quo, but I feel better.
No, I think that is interesting. I think it is important. You know, we all get stuck in this rat race sometimes, the catching up with the Joneses, and you had a tremendous transaction. So I admire that about you. I admire that you were able to separate, and you were serious too. You were thinking, hey, I am ready to sell this business, and if the offer comes that works for us, I will do it. But I'm going to pick on you a little bit. I've had clients cry, yell, walk away from the deal. You did none of those.
Well, that is not true.
Very practical.
Well, I didn't cry.
Well, you didn't cry in front of me.
But I was a whiny baby quite a bit. And I encourage anyone who goes through this to let those things vent. I mean, I remember when my family and I were on a great family vacation in Rome, and at 1 a.m. there, I was talking to you and the attorney, and, there was a little setback in the business that we were going to have to disclose and all of that stuff, and it all got worked out. But at the time, I'm like on vacation saying, forget it. What am I doing? This is terrible. It's not, we're probably just lost the deal. It's a very, very emotional thing. So I'm surprised you say that, because I would have thought you would have remembered me as a fairly complainy, whiny, scaredy cat during a lot of this.
Well, those aren't the words that I would use. But I will tell you, you were always reasonable. You were always, and there are emotions, right? There's a lot of emotions going to this. I wouldn't call you whiny. I wouldn't call you any of those things, and everybody handles these things different. But there was a point in time where I think I had to say to you, hey, if this deal doesn't work for you, let's not do it.
Right.
And, obviously, I don't think either one of us wanted that, but those are the kind of things that we go through, and a client goes through this process. It's not easy. It is not something that is, like you said, selling a house where you can do an inspection and then you've got, a 30-day period and then it's done, right? There's more to it than this. And I do think you handled it really well. But in every deal, there's sleepless nights. There's something, like you said. I'll give an example of a business that I was representing that we had to take off the market. They had $1.5 million of EBITDA, a good sized business, a lot of interest in the market. But when their full year 24 financials came out, they'd lost $1 million in EBITDA. They went down by $1 million because of a contract they lost. And we took that business off the market. It didn't make any sense to continue. They need to go fix that. So things do come up outside of the transaction. But like I don't want to call it even a hiccup, but the issue we had to address with you was just a third party giving consent. And they were unresponsive. They didn't understand the urgency that we needed. And the buyer, rightfully so, needed comfort that relationship was going to continue. So we had to wait, I forget, at least 30 days for that to come in. And it eventually did, and we eventually got the deal done. But patience is a virtue. So it's funny you say whiny. You weren't whiny. You did call a lot, and we talked a lot, but clients do that, and that's why we're here.
Maybe
right?
It was internal. Internally, I was whiny, but that gets to other advice, though. You can't shut down and just push out. You have to listen to all the sides. I mean, again, you're an expert. I only did one of these. You've done many. The attorney has done many. And so, and the market's always right, right? So the market's saying
Yeah.
things too. And so you have to, if you're going through this process, be open to listening and not, don't be arrogant like a 2-year. There's a great comedian who talks about his daughter would call fig Newtons pig Newtons. And she swore that's what it was. And her daddy was wrong. And he's just like, you get what you deserve, little girl. You at a certain point, you have to know that I know they're called fig Newtons. It's a great routine. But anyway, that's it. You can't be calling them pig Newtons when you have 3 advisors telling you, no, they're fig Newtons.
Yeah, this is some foreshadowing, unexpected when I walked into this conversation today, but you're making me more nervous about my 12-year-old daughter turning into a teenager.
Yeah, good luck
because
with that.
I'm already have. Yeah.
Once they turn, that's a different podcast, but it's a long one, and I'm no expert in it myself.
Well, I'll tell you what, we had our closing dinner down there in Tampa at Burns, a great steakhouse. When she turns 13, I'm going to fly back down, and we'll do another dinner there. And that will be the topic of that dinner is how to make
that was a great
work.
moment, by the way, too, right? Because it's one thing to share it with family, but I don't think family really gets. They get it in a sense, but the fact that you flew down, that was a very memorable dinner for me. That was important. So I was very grateful.
My favorite part of the job. It's my favorite part of the job. Not to get too deep, but I'm here to serve, and that is what makes me happy. Obviously, the commission or the success fee hitting the bank account is a wonderful moment as well, just like the funds hitting your bank account, because then it's done and it's real. But we set out to accomplish a goal, and we did it well, and it has to be celebrated. Just a sidebar. It's the favorite part, going out and celebrating a dinner. We had one last week. I went out with some clients and the attorneys, and it was a great meal, and a couple martinis and a couple toasts, and it's a good thing. So Andrew, again, it's been an amazing ride with the Center for Executive Coaching and you. I'm thrilled about what we were able to accomplish together, what you accomplished by building the successful business. You were very diligent. You're a smart man. You've always got some great analogies for me, and I feel like I need to write them down. But tell the listeners what your key takeaways are. If someone's sitting in your shoes back in 2022, considering doing this, what would you tell them to get ready to make this as smooth as possible?
Right. Well, one is go into it reasonable, right? Make sure you understand that, your business is not going to be valued like NVIDIA or Google was in the day, or, any unicorns like that. You're a private, small company. Be reasonable. Don't just look at the spreadsheet numbers. Don't try to sell stuff, that will happen, but hasn't happened yet. All of that. So be reasonable, but get the valuation. I mean, that's, number one. John showed his professionalism and knowledge and how he could help right up front. So that's one. Two, know your bottom line. Right. Always, I like the attorney said, once the price is decided, it only has one way to go, and that's down. And your main leverage at that point is you can always walk away. If it's an uncomfortable deal, walk away. 3 is listen. I got an education there that is worth a university degree in a way. And I like to learn. So it was a fascinating process, but there's a ton to learn. You really have to go in humble, understanding that there's a ton. At least I didn't know on the legal side. I didn't understand the accounting side and some of the things related to that. So I think that's important. 4, get a good team. As John said, it's worth spending money on the attorney. And 5, maybe the best advice, if you're listening to this, is set your business up now for success. Like if this is a year away for you, 2 years away, whatever it is, start building the relationship now with someone like John. But, every business has room to improve. If it's too dependent on you, start building a team. If there's things you're doing that a true CEO shouldn't be doing, start outsourcing that or hiring people part-time, whatever it takes. I think that's big. Finally, just prepare yourself psychologically. I can say, having made it to the other side, that the weight lifted was worth every minute. But I know John will tell you that during our conversations, I wasn't sure of that at the time. And so I think, prepare yourself. It's almost like a 9-month religious or Zen retreat. You just have to be ready. All the religious figures go into the desert and get tortured by demons and things like that. That's what it's going to feel like. And so you have to shore yourself up psychologically for what could be the most exciting event of your professional career, but will be a test along the way. So I think that those are just some of the pieces of advice I'd give. And, most importantly, I really got lucky because I responded to this. For some reason, I responded to John's email. I let him do the valuation, and I can't, and he was the right guy. I know there was a sea of snakes out there. And I would highly recommend that, at least get the valuation, talk to John, listen to him. I don't think he's going to oversell you on anything. You get to decide. You're in control of the process, but you're going to have someone who walks with you through everything. Again, he's that buffer, that translator, and he's going to tell it like it is so that you have a realistic understanding of what this will be like, what your options are, and you can make the choices from there.
Well, Andrew, I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for trusting us to help you exit your business. We met over a cold email. I think I sent you an email. We did a Zoom call similar to this, although the microphone wasn't as good. And we got to know each other. We did that valuation, which again is something I encourage folks to do. Time is on your side in these transactions until it's not, until some external force, whether it's business performance, whether it's a health issue, a partnership dispute, something else could control your destiny. So you've got to be prepared for this. I say every 90 days, you need to be asking yourself, am I growing this business or am I preparing to exit it? And that's an important reflection point. You need to be building this with the end in mind. So, Andrew, I want to thank you for your friendship. That may sound cheesy, but I really am grateful for you. I learn a lot from you as well. You coached me a little bit through this process, and I learned a lot from you. I want to congratulate you for building such a impactful business that has impacted positively coaches around the country and around the world. And I'm excited to see what's next for you, whether it's continuing to perform your role at the Center for Executive Coaching or, what's next for you. I'm also excited about, I've got a very cheap but qualified intern coming in this summer. So I appreciate you referring your son to me, and I'm looking forward to working with him. Andrew, thank you. Really appreciate you. Thanks for your time today, and looking forward to putting this out there and giving some good advice to those who may be considering doing what you've done so well.
Thanks, John.